Right, welcome back everybody. We have our last application, which is North Burlingham, land north of the Green, North Burlingham, 2025-2963, and we have Ellie as our presenting officer. Over to you, Ellie.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for staying later this afternoon. It's been a long one, so I appreciate that. So this application is for one single dwelling as a self-build. This has been submitted in outline form with all matters reserved except for the access, and therefore the access is to be considered as part of this proposal. The officer recommendation on this one is to refuse planning permission, and it has been called in for that reason. So I'll move through just on the slides. So I'll just give you a kind of aerial setting in relation to the site. And I've just indicated on that site where the A47 dualling works are located. In terms of the next slide, just a more zoomed in version of the site, showing roughly, if you can see that, the square approximately where the application is proposed. And then just more of a zoomed out version of an aerial plan, just showing its proximity to services and facilities. You can see Lingwood is approximately 2 kilometres south of the proposed site, and it shows that dualling works for the A47 in the middle of that. So just moving on again. These are indicative plans only, given that it has been submitted in outline form. So these are not set as part of this application. So again, illustrative purposes only. It is indicated, as you can see, they are to be, or it is to be a single-storey dwelling with contemporary materials. Again, this would be a matter for a reserved matters application if this application was considered acceptable. So I'll just move over to some photos of the site. So this is looking onto the site entrance from the green. You can see that there is a formalised access there. This was approved in 2021. The Highways Authority raised no objections at that point to that access. And again, as part of this application, as access is to be considered, Norfolk County Council Highways Department do not raise an objection to this proposal using that existing access. So I'll just walk you around the site. You can see that it is very open. It's just laid to grass. As such, there are trees around the site, but not in the site. In terms of its fencing and boundary treatment, you do have some post and rail fencing around the site. Again, just moving round, you can see on that side it's hedgerows, again trees as well. There are no trees, as I said, inside of the site itself. And then just further round, you can see some neighbouring properties in kind of the distance as well. Just a further one of access, you can see my car parked just here, and that would be how they enter into the site. Just a further one looking northeast. Again, you can see the distance with the barn conversions in the background. So I'll just take you outside of the site to the site access. Now this has had approval and has been constructed. This is looking east onto the green. Down further to the east is a no-through road, so there's no further traffic that can go through. It was a cul-de-sac as such, dead end as you probably like to say as well. This is then looking west on the green, which then takes you into how you can get onto the A47 along those single track roads. And then what I will leave you on is the final slide. So essentially what we have is a single dwelling outside of the development boundary. This area itself is not considered a settlement in its own right when you apply 7.5 of the Greater Norwich Local Plan. Lingwood and Burlingham are a parish. Lingwood does have a settlement boundary that is located 2 miles south of this site in particular. I will also bring your attention to a previous appeal on the site in 2021, which was dismissed on the unsustainable location of the proposal. Therefore, my recommendation is to refuse planning permission on the similar grounds to what was under the appeal decision, in line with it being outside of the development boundary,
It does not accord with policy 7.5 of the Greater Norwich Local Plan, because we cannot consider this area a settlement in its own right without a settlement boundary. Along with another reason to refuse, one of them is the GIRAMs for the Green Infrastructure Recreational Avoidance Mitigation Strategy, which can be overcome at appeal if needed, and then going on to the unsustainable location of the proposal. The reasons for refusal are set out in your agenda, and therefore I will hand over to members for any questions. Thank you.
Apologise, I've got a tickle in my throat. Any comments for the officer? Can I just ask, why are we not considering this as an infill site? Because there's houses either side.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we, as part of the Broadland Local Plan, we don't have an infill policy, and therefore we aim to put new development in sustainable locations. And then policy 7.5 of the Greater Norwich Local Plan can be a permissive policy for outside development boundaries, but it has to be adjacent to existing development boundaries or adjacent to settlements without a settlement boundary.
Yeah, looking at your slides, Ellie, this looks like sort of old farm buildings next door that have been done up and to barn conversions and that sort of thing. So it's probably like an agricultural holding, and that area just looks like it's paddocks. So it's not really a much of a hamlet, really. It's just a small amount of housing clustered together, but it's not. I don't think it's appropriate for infill, quite honestly, because it is in a countryside setting. So I sort of agree with what you're saying. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering about the planning balance here, because at the moment we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. So I thought that is quite a major factor in the planning balance. So I just wondered how you'd looked at that, really, and also additionally, this is going to be a self-build dwelling, so we do have a requirement, don't we, to have a certain number of self-build dwellings. So both of those are perhaps quite key.
Absolutely. So in the assessment that we've done, we have applied that tilted balance. So this is where we cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. So we've been able to assess its benefits in terms of that social, environmental and economical roles, and that we haven't found any significant things that would outweigh the harms that have been identified. And obviously this is material consideration with the appeal decision, which was a few years ago, which also demonstrated this was in an unsustainable area. And in terms of how we've balanced that, we have to think, is it an acceptable location? Are they going to be reliant on their private motor vehicle? And we are obviously know that electric vehicles are on the rise, and they can provide, if they wanted to, at the reserve matters, an electric vehicle charging point, which I also think aligns with building regulations. But the inspector did comment on that specific matter in the fact that they could still choose a petrol or diesel, car, and they don't have to have an electric vehicle. So that's how we've come to that balance as well. And then what was the other? The self-build, yes, sorry. Yes, so we obviously do give that significant weight in our determination. We are aware that it's a self-build proposal, and say in terms of that tilted balance, that's where we also then have to consider if it then tips that balance as such into making this an acceptable proposal just solely on the self-build.
Can I just come in there? In terms of Broadland is meeting its demand for self-build in terms of assessment against the register, and yes, it's a material consideration, but it wouldn't be decisive enough to outweigh the conflicts that we've identified.
Yeah, shame really, isn't it? We have to stick to the regulations. Okay, anybody else want to comment? Oh, we've got a support, haven't we? Daniel White, would you like to come to the front, please? I think you probably know what to do by now. I've said it so many times today.
Can you hear me okay? Cool. Good evening, Chair and members of the Plan Committee. My name is Daniel White, speaking on behalf of the applicants, Mr and Mrs Tretz, in relation to this proposal. The proposal is for a modest, low-impact dwelling which fully reflects the character in Broadland Green and is supported by local and national policy. As already stated by the planning officer, it's considered that policy 7.5 is key to this application. Recent appeal decisions within the district, most notably of Western Green, have confirmed that the groups of dwellings in rural locations, even where no formal settlement boundary exists, can still be considered settlements for the purposes of policy 7.5. The inspector recognised that such clusters form a distinct settlement and should be assessed under policy 7.5 accordingly. It's therefore considered that the site should be assessed under policy 7.5 in this case, too, as it's in a settlement without a boundary. Birmingham Green is very similar. It's a recognisable cluster of dwellings, like you've stated, with a clear built form, and the site fits comfortably within that pattern. Policy 7.5 also acknowledges that when dealing with very small-scale rural development, the council should apply greater flexibility in relation to access to services. It's recognised that these types of settlements will never have the service provision of large villages. The NPPF states that to promote sustainable development in rural areas, housing should be located where it will enhance and maintain the vitality of rural communities. Planning policies should identify opportunities for villages to grow and thrive, especially where there will be support, where this will support local services. Where there are groups of smaller settlements, development in one village may support services in a village nearby. For me, this is key. It's noted that Birmingham Green is in the middle of three larger settlements, Blowfield to the west, Lingwood to the south and Acle to the east, in which all essential services and facilities are found. It's acknowledged that with the addition of the A47, these larger settlements are all accessible by bicycle, albeit electric bike or whatever you choose to use these days. The proposal before you is simply for one indicative, well-designed, sustainable dwelling at a scale explicitly anticipated by the policy, and one which mirrors the low-density rural character of the area. It's acknowledged the council does not currently have a 5-year housing land supply, and this is highly relevant to this application. Under the NPPF paragraph 11, the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies, and planning permission should be granted unless adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The benefits from this site are, the site, like you've said, forms a logical infill plot previously acknowledged in the earlier appeal as part of the established pattern of this development, delivers one new dwelling at a time of housing shortfall, and provides a self-build opportunity for my clients, something the council is not currently meeting in terms of its statutory obligations as a district as a whole. No technical objections have been raised, and there's no evidence of any harm that would outweigh these benefits. The proposal respects the character of Birmingham Green and has safe access, resulting in no landscape harm, and maintains the spacing and rhythm of surrounding dwellings. I'm just conscious of time. I think it's quite key that I read what the previous inspector said in terms of the proposed dwelling would be single-storey with a form similar to the neighbouring barn complex and would be set back from the public highway with a large driveway, detached garage and garden. Therefore, due to the design layout and presence of screening, the proposed dwelling would not appear undesirably consolidate development nor have an urbanising effect on the area. Mr and Mrs Trett are very mindful of the concerns raised by local residents, particularly given there's been little development in this part of the village. Their intention is to create a high quality single-storey home for them to live in themselves. They have a genuine personal interest in ensuring the development sits comfortably within its surroundings. They're committed to delivering a scheme that respects the character of the area and integrates sensitively into the existing setting. And on that point, I would kind of just say that the applicants are willing to accept a condition for EV charging like you've suggested, and would look to do that as part of a reserve matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Okay. It's another one I'm a bit conflicted about because it looks a very nice building, but under 7.5, like the gentleman quoted, it says the site is poorly located in relation to essential services, which does create barriers to access and increase reliance on private vehicles. So it does fail to meet the requirements there. Anybody got any comments? Peter?
Thanks. I mean, I just find it a little odd that in 2021 it was approved the formation, laying out and construction of a means of access. You think, well, why was that granted if this was now going to be turned down? It would be nice to know what is proposed to be there, but obviously we don't know that just yet, do we? Which it would be nice to see a plan whether it would be in keeping. But I find it strange to say that when everything else is developed either side of it, that we are turning this down. But though I can see Ellie's point.
Joe?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just noticed the comments of the Parish Council and also Councillor Jess Royal. I'm not really very clear whether she is objecting to the application, or is she proposing that we adopt the application?
She's here if you want to ask her. Okay, anybody else? Eleanor? No, you got comments? That's all.
No, I think has already been mentioned. This is a finely, it seems quite finely balanced to me, this application, but on the whole, I feel I should go with the officer's recommendation to refuse it, because it doesn't comply with some major policies that we've got for allocation of housing sites, and I think it's very important that we need to stick with those policies. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. It was interesting what Tracy said about we have, you know, a full quota of self-builds in Broadland, so I think we can sort of discount that self-build, and actually on balance, because it is such a rural area, I agree with the officer that we should go to a refusal. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to refusal as the officer's recommendation. It's on page 214 of your report. Can I just take it as read because it's rather long? Yeah? Okay. All those in favour of refusal, please raise your hand. Thank you. That's unanimous. Can I hand over to Tracy for the appeals?
I'm just going to note the appeals given the time. I think if we're certainly happy to do an appeal session and reflect on any. I think we have had some appeal decisions which are in unsustainable locations similar to this sort of scheme. So please do, when they come through, note them and read them, because they are, you know, help us apply consistently our policies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody. Close the meeting.